So you mentioned verifiable credentials. I've been involved in that for about 3 years now, and
Mm.
it's this emerging standard coming out of W3C, the Decentralized Identity Foundation, and there is the concept of an immunity passport. And even actually today, I think in the briefing from the White House, there actually was this discussed briefly about this immunity passport and what would that look like. And Bill Gates actually mentioned this on Reddit as well. There, and they asked me anything. And so certainly there's another question I saw in the chat was about why blockchains. Why solve this with blockchain technology? And I think it's a really interesting tool to have in our tool chest that is this trust shifting mechanism using distributed public key infrastructure, which is basically the public key of an account is actually like you have a pseudo anonymity, a pseudo identity, and actually leveraging those public keys in order to actually have this chain of trust or this web of trust model. So actually, like you can verify and authentic and be transparent about the authenticity of where you're getting information and how you're getting information, how it's curated. So again, that first thing is this information sharing and how do we audit and verify the authenticity of the source of that information to make sure that actually it's relevant and up to date. There's nothing toward that's actually happening in between. And then certainly it's about resource allocation. As once you actually have the right information, is where are the hotspots? How many ventilators? Who's the PPE? Um, uh, you know, the ability to actually then put resources in the form of people and physicians and clinicians actually in the right place. So this idea that's formulating in my mind is certainly is this need for an immunity passport. And it's probably, we're not going to have a vaccine anytime soon. Vaccines take at least a year to develop. We have to do testing and clinical trials to see uh, how effective the vaccine is before we just vaccinate the whole population. And sometimes maybe we actually missed it and actually spent billions of dollars in vaccinating the wrong
Right.
marker to actually to do it. But that's really, I certainly see that right now our healthcare workers are in are at the front line of this battle right now, and about 20% of people of COVID cases are healthcare providers. And so the idea being is that once we actually do have a marker, a test to actually to see if you're immune, meaning you have the proper IG, IgM, IgG, meaning that you've actually shown immunity and long-term immunity, not just acute immunity to COVID-19, that those people actually can, one, live their life normally. They don't have to be in isolation anymore. And if they're a
Mm.
healthcare provider, those are the best people to actually put it at the front line because actually the risk to them is now minimal. And I think once we actually do have mass vaccination efforts, it actually would be this idea of a uh, immunity passport that you've been vaccinated and you're immune and you can carry on your life and go to restaurants and go to bars and have a beer and live your life. So I think but so going back to now to the 5 R's, which is really the resolve. How do we actually get through this crisis to contain, mitigate, suppress the outbreak? And this gets into just information sharing. Certainly the resilience to survive this. And just think about what we're doing now is actually virtual meetings. Is actually how do we survive through this and actually build the right tools to hunker down in our bunkers to actually to survive through this. So you're seeing this ability to have uh, uh, you know a resilience to actually to survive both uh, the the acute phase of the infection, but also the economic burden of this, and how then we try to return to some sense of normality. And what does that new normal look like? Well, we have to reimagine that normal and re-architect it. And certainly, I think there's going to be a lot more restaurants that are prepared in the future to go with takeout food as being their like a major revenue source
Mm.
than sit down restaurants should there be another pandemic or other world crisis. So I think it really is, I think, a framing to sort of approach how we re-architect this new future and be prepared in the future for new pandemics so that we actually have the infrastructure in place and to immediately deploy and be able to scale up the healthcare workers, the ventilators, the PPE immediately in the next crisis.